What's up YouTube, this is Yoshi as usual, I'm Max and welcome to more Let's Play Asagao Academy, Normal Boots Club. Last time, we made our choice for the guy we're doing for our first route, or guy we're dating for our first route. I don't think doing him comes for a little bit. Anyway, we've chosen JonTron. We're secretly just getting close to him for Jacques. Don't tell him that though. Anyway, now we're apparently at the mall with Shoe Man. Anyway, what do you think? Does that look good? Wait, what are we talking about? John was pointing to a chunk of hollow wood painted burnt orange, part of a set to make a birdhouse. It was a few days after the flower festival and we were at the mall. John asked me to hang out with him, and when I accepted, he immediately came here. It was a little confusing to me. We were talking to each other more than usual, hanging out with each other all the time, but I didn't know whether to consider the flower festival as our first date. I wasn't sure whether he had feelings for me either. I mean, this is a guy you have, like, never talked to before this. Like, okay, occasionally talked to, but very little. Like, he helped you out once, and you helped him with origami. And then also there was the thing with the play. Okay, you talked to him a fair bit, let's be honest here. Point being, suddenly he's asking you to hang out after you just went to a festival where you both dressed up for it. How could you not think that you're dating now? I get that it's a visual novel, but still. And I had feelings for him, but what were they? Oh my god. Girl. It was all too confusing, so I almost preferred the general silence on that subject. Right now, hanging out with each other was fun. I didn't want to think about it harder than that. We were window shopping and chatting with each other, but of course when John saw this birdhouse in a shop window, he stopped. Now, nothing I did would make him budge. Oh geez, that's actually louder than I expected. I need to lower the volume on my headphones. Well, I do like the colors. It is a home fit for a king. It is heaven. It is the seventh kingdom. Buy it for me. I glanced at the price tag and gasped. Maybe not. Okay, I want to put something out here. This is a different session than the last episode, and when I loaded it up, I noticed that my file was named A New Home for Jacques. And at first I thought, oh god, what's going on? Is John getting rid of Jacques or what? And now I'm just watching this thing about the birdhouse, and I'm like, okay, I worried for nothing. Let's, Jacques, you like ice cream, don't you? I enjoy it in theory, as every other semi-sentient human being does. But you know what I would enjoy not in theory? That birdhouse. John snapped his fingers. He makes a compelling case. Alright, buddy, if it's for you, it's worth it. Finally, you see who wears the pants in this relationship. And as pants are fundamentally worse than wearing dresses or going naked, we know who is superior here. I eyed Jacques wearily, but John simply laughed. What a cod, right, Hannah? Right. John went inside to buy the birdhouse. I stayed behind in the main center of the mall, watching a mother and her 3-year-old son walking past. Part of the reason I didn't want to go in was because everything in that shop was so damn expensive. Also, mega clothes! Itty bitty kitties and super fun way in the back. Super fun. The very thought of walking around in there sent shivers up my spine. One wrong move and it'd be back to Amaririsu for me. But the other reason was that I needed some time away from Jacques. My feelings on him were mixed. Admittedly, it was hard for me to hang around him so much. It was clear that John wasn't going to part with him though, so I tried to suck it up. It was clear that Jacques was a well-behaved bird robot, one who was not at all inclined to talon-based murder on a whim, but every now and then, he'd flutter his wings or turn to preen himself and adrenaline shot through my body. I was constantly on edge, and it was nice to have a break, even if it was only temporary. John emerged from the shop, a large cardboard box under one arm. Sweet, I got it! Ready to head back? What? Already? But we just got here. Oh, well, we did, didn't we? It would be hard to lug this thing all over the mall, though. John made a face at me and I sighed. Fine, let's go back. Sweet, thanks, Hannah. John, I ain't gonna be taking your shit for much longer. Wait, why am I just see wielding a heavy hammer, I'm like, what? A few days later, I was sitting in John's dorm room wielding a heavy hammer. Oh, we're putting it together, I think. John poked his head over the instruction manual, examining the different planks of wood in front of us. I had no idea how this was supposed to become a birdhouse, but John was determined to see it through. Nail this in here. John pointed to a dot in the orange wood, and I lifted the nail over the spot. Here? Yep, there. Are you sure? Yes, it'll be the side. Hammer it in. I scrunched my eyes shut and lifted the hammer. Whoa, 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 whoa! What on earth are you doing? I froze, staring at him. Hammering the wood? Hammering your fist, more like. I'm better with pottery wheels? Give me that. John yanked the hammer from my hand, shaking his head. Kill me like a maniac, I swear. But he was smiling even as he huffed. Is he? Day faded to night as we worked on the little birdhouse, fielding some harsh words from other boys on the floor and mishaps involving incorrectly attached spokes. Harsh words from other boys? What? Are people like walking by getting mad at you for some reason? Finally, John screwed in a peg on the front of the house and sat back on his heels. We did it! It's done! Okay, what the... Okay, Skype just restarted for some reason. Sorry about that. Skype decided to restart for some reason and then just popped up in the middle of the recording. Okay, it's done. It is! A tiny orange birdhouse with a dirty red roof stood proudly in front of us, about as tall as my arm. It looked bigger on the box, but maybe this is better? John stood the birdhouse on the edge of his desk and smiled. Now Jacques has a place to stay when he pretends to sleep. When he pretends to sleep? Well, he's got to recharge, but I have to plug him in and watch him for that to happen. Otherwise, his battery could overload and he'd literally explode. He can explode? He's got a self-destruct mechanism too. But don't worry, only I know what phrase triggers it. Was that really a good thing? So, now that we're done here, do you want to take a break and play some games or something? Okay, but I feel like my John voice isn't completely accurate. Like, I'm trying, but it's kind of getting exaggerated over time. I feel like it's gonna get very exaggerated the more I have to voice him. Eventually, I'm gonna be making him sound like Al Capone or something. Oh, that sounds really nice. Do you mind if we do a puzzle game? I want to practice for the tournament, so... John's face darkened as soon as I said the word puzzle, and I stopped in my tracks. Puzzles. My old nemesis. He stroked his beard, then turned to stare solemnly out the window. I timidly approached him, hands pressed to my rapidly beating heart. What happened between you and puzzles so many years ago? It wasn't what I wanted to happen, I'll tell you that. John leaned an arm over the window, then heaved a heavy sigh. I loved puzzles. They were good to me, and in return, I was good to them. We were symbiotic, but then... He shuddered. They destroyed me. I was stuck on a puzzle I witnessed several times before, but was never able to solve. I spent hours poring over this puzzle, days even. Finally, I decided to take a break. What can take my mind off of this, I asked myself. Unsurprisingly, I knew the answer. A new puzzle. A new challenge. Something grounded in reality. I would solve a 1,000-piece puzzle. But John... I know. I should have known better. Should have been more careful. He clenched his fist, then hid his face. After a few seconds, he collected himself and resumed. What is going on? I shook the pieces out of the box and set to work, but both games were salty. In hindsight, I should have known better than to puzzle in front of another puzzle. So, what happened at the end? I laid a gentle hand on John's shoulders. He nodded at me, gathering strength from my touch. I finished the 1,000-piece puzzle, all except for one piece. No. That piece went missing. No! I found that piece underneath the very puzzle I was solving. What's going on? Yes, yes, that is as it happened. John put his face in his hands. When I returned, a shattered mess to my beloved computer puzzles, I discovered my save was wiped out as well. I knew then what happened. The puzzle gods were angry at me. No, they are angry with me. And that's why I can't go near them. He turned slowly towards me, staring at me with eyes ablaze. That is why you are here. So, at what point is he gonna go, psych, just kidding, I just hate puzzles? Me? Yes, you.
Hana.
You, Hana. You are our only hope. John took my hand in his, leaning towards me. His brown eyes got bigger and bigger, and what pretty eyelashes he had. Then his face just centimeters from mine. So don't mess this up, okay? Okay. He stepped away from the window and from me, returning to our rugged birdhouse.
See you later.
Anyways, I've got some work to do now, so I'll see you later. What happened to playing games? Summarily dismissed and not entirely sure what just happened, I gathered my things. John was inspecting his planner, frustration etched on his face. Right. Thanks anyways, John. John glanced at me, and seeing the sad look on my face, frowned. No, thank you. I really enjoyed myself. This was fun. We should hang out more often. I'm not satisfied with seeing you alone only every couple of days. That would be nice. It's such a shame you're not interested in joining the play. I would get to see you all the time then, and I swear you're just right for a tree. Wait, so did I say no or something? He shook his head sadly.
See ya.
Anyways, be seeing ya. Well, I don't know when I said no, but okay. The more time I spent with John, the more attractive the prospect of joining the play became. Of course, being a tree was not something I would ever be proud to admit to. I certainly wouldn't be running home to tell my dad about it. But if I could see John every day, it just might be worth it. John and I tried to spend more time together over the next week, but it proved to be rather difficult. Between John's play practice, our homework, PB&J, normal Boots Club meetings, and practicing for the tournament, there was hardly any time in which we could see each other. Even when we did, we were almost never alone. Mai was in my room, PBG in his, students wandering the fields and hallways. With all the time I wasn't spending with John, I started to reconsider his proposal. As insulting as was his belief that I would sincerely make the best tree this side of the Pacific, I had no doubt he sincerely meant it as a compliment. John was prone to putting his foot in his mouth. He was blunt and straightforward and usually said exactly what he meant, even if that wasn't the most tactful thing or even what his true feelings on the situation were. Besides, if you looked at it a different way, being a tree really was a special kind of talent. Is it though? One had to remain still and completely and totally lack presence. Apparently, ninjas trained hard to develop this kind of ability, and here I had it naturally. Sure, pretending to be a tree wasn't exactly as cool as being a ninja, but it would be kind of cool to be in a play. Due to my stage fright, I had never been in one. If I didn't even have to speak to be a tree, it was the perfect role. I didn't think another opportunity as perfect as this would come again. So with these totally reasonable and not at all reaching justifications in mind, I went to class to talk to John. But John wasn't in class that day. It was unusual, but not totally unexpected. John was falling behind with preparations for the play and had been working hard. It wouldn't surprise me if he skipped class to build a set or review costume designs. So when class finally ended, I headed to the theater, intent on accepting John's offer and helping any way I possibly could. I opened the door to the theater, it creaking with what felt like deliberate menace. Yeah, that creaking went on a long while. The light from the open doorway cascaded through the audience seats and down onto the stage, but nobody came. The house lights were off, only a few lights dimly lit on the stage. Maybe the drama club didn't meet every day? But it was weird to have those lights left on if nobody was around. I wasn't about to go fiddling in the dark with the stage equipment, though. Maybe John was resting in his dorm room. I turned to leave when something made me pause. Was that a sniff? Someone was whimpering. Concerned, I stepped down towards the stage. Hello? Is anybody here? My voice echoed, bouncing off the walls backstage. There was a slight chill to the air the further down I went, and the stillness caused goosebumps to creep up my arms. I heard it again, this time to my right. Hesitantly, I followed the sound, heart pounding hard enough to shake my vision. A dark form emerged, huddled against the wall.
Who are you? What are you doing in here?
I took another step closer and my vision adjusted. It was John, hunched over something in his hands. His face was pale and lined with smudged tears and sweat. It looked like he hadn't moved in hours. What happened this time?
John!
I rushed to his side as he attempted to stifle his snobs, or stifle, I don't know. He reached an arm towards me and I took his hand in mine.
Anna, it's terrible. What happened? Are you sick? Are you hurt?
With another stifled cry, John shifted. In his lap was a tangled mess of wire, bolts, and green? Realization hit me like pot shattering against the floor.
That can't be... Jacques, he's...
John stared at the mess in his lap, shaking his head.
What happened?
John howled, crouching over Jacques' mess of a body again, and I checked myself. It was too soon, and John was in too volatile of a state to really be talked to. Instead, I rubbed his back, trying to talk in a soothing voice.
Well, it's okay. It'll be okay. He's a robot, so he could be repaired. He could be rebuilt if worst comes to worst.
John continued shaking his head, completely inconsolable. I had no idea whether Jacques couldn't be fixed or if he was just losing it. Instantly, I shifted into caretaker mode. I gently placed a hand on the side of John's head, stilling its near-constant shaking, and pushed it onto my shoulder.
Shh. It'll be okay. We're going to figure something out. It'll be okay. Focus on the sound of my voice, okay? I'm still here. You're still here. It'll be okay.
I tried to murmur calming things, humming songs and gently rocking him back and forth. Back when I was still living with my father and started having panic attacks, this was what he would do to calm me down. I squeezed my eyes shut, praying it would work for John, too. Eventually, John's trembling calmed. He sniffed. Then he wrapped an arm around me, hugging me like a teddy bear. We stayed like that for a while. I didn't know how much time passed, but I eventually lost feeling in my legs. Finally, John spoke.
Jacques is the most important thing to me. What am I going to do if I don't have him?
I pulled out of our embrace, searching his face.
You'll be alright, John. You're much stronger than you think, believe me.
John swallowed, turning away from me. From somewhere within, he gathered the strength to pull himself together. After another second or two, he sat back on his heels and looked at me.
Thanks, Anna.
He was still very clearly upset, but at least he was coherent. I nodded.
Maybe there is a way we could fix him. I'm not sure. But when I saw him like that, I just...
His breathing sped up again, the beginnings of hyperventilation. I recognized them from my own experience. I stroked his hand.
It's okay. We'll take him and see right now. Let's just focus on that for now. Until we know for sure, let's focus on what's happening right now.
John nodded solemnly. With a gentle hand, he took off his jacket and turned to Jacques, or what was left of him. He placed everything in his jacket, then bundled it all together in his arms. When he checked that there were no holes bolts could drop out of, he nodded at me.
Let's go.
We rushed from the theater to Bluebell House, heads down to avoid eye contact with the students. Thankfully, due to the chill in the air and the lack of sun, few students were out. Neither of us were interested in answering the questions that were sure to come once people saw the look on John's face. When we finally made it to Bluebell House, John asked me to fish the keys from his pocket. I did so, ignoring the blush that fought to rise to my cheeks, somewhat irritated that even in such a grave circumstance, my mind wandered to other things. Finally, I pushed open the door and John rushed in. As I followed, I checked the hallway. Nobody had come out of their rooms. We were, as far as I could tell, safe. John went straight to his desk in the back of the room, where a small metallic contraption was attached to his computer. Seeing it was as it was Jacques' size, I assumed that was where he slept, or charged. I sat on the couch, trying hard not to make a sound. John was, for the moment, not utterly consumed by his grief. I was terrified that something I said or did would break the spell. Thankfully, PBG was nowhere to be found. More than likely, he was on the field, practicing for Asagao's first game against Hatoful High. John placed Jacques' remains on his desk and unwrapped his jacket. Wait, Hatoful? Funny. Moving painstakingly slowly so as not to alter the positions of the wires and gears more than they already had been. When he finally finished, he put on his jacket without seeming to realize what he was doing. Those jackets were more like their second skins, it seemed. As John paused to survey the damage, I peered over his shoulder at the tangled mess. Jacques' head and claws were still visible. Sort of. Some of his feathers were burned off, along with chips in the internal wiring. Wires were cut and edges blunted. Something that looked like a microchip had a dent in it. One of his wings was completely detached from his body. John turned to me, and I hesitantly shook my head.
I don't really know anything about robotics.
John wiped his face with his hands, pushing his skin up towards his hairline.
I know a bit, but not enough to fix this. I don't know what I'm going to do. Where did you buy him? You could probably take him back and they could fix it.
Didn't he already tell this story? Like, he wasn't bought. He already told the story. Jacques was made by a monk who lives in a technological empire on a mountaintop in Tibet. Or at least he did. He's dead now. I still get updates to that guy's grandchildren. They update the operating system for him because it was easier to figure out than how some old man managed to get both a fully functional AI and a robotic bird shell and stick the two together.
I see.
What were we going to do? It was a question I didn't need to ask. John's head was shaking once again, some kind of compulsive movement he must have not even realized was happening. He didn't say anything. I had never lost a pet. My father and I couldn't afford pets, not on his salary alone, but I knew a lot about grief, the echoing pain of a sudden absence. The absence of someone who was always there for you, the sudden feeling of living in a world with no safe harbor, in a world where only you could look after yourself. I laid a hand on John's shoulder.
Do you want to be alone?
The edges of John's lips raised in what must have counted as a smile, given the circumstances. Thank you, Hana. He sat down in his desk chair and became as still as a rock. Before I left, I grabbed a blanket sitting on what I assumed was John's bunk and draped it around his shoulders. I had a feeling he'd be like that for a while. As I approached the door, John stirred from his reverie, something. Please don't tell anyone about this, Hana. Please. I nodded. He turned back to his desk. Man, this is getting really depressing all of a sudden. Holy crap. I crept out of the room, shutting the door gently behind me. PBG would come back from practice eventually, and he would find John there. PBG had a very calming personality. He'd be able to handle things. He'd be able to help a little, at least to keep watch over John.
I wish there was more I could do.
It wasn't until I was on my walk back home that the full impact of what happened hit me. I was so caught up in helping John overcome his shock that I forgot that I, too, knew and cared for Jacques. Not as much as John, no way, but I'd grown fond of the little bird's snark.
He's not going to sass me ever again, is he?
Hot tears rolled down my cheeks. I wiped my face and doubled my pace. Like John, I didn't want people to see me cry. Of course, there was no way I could avoid Mai, not when I lived with her. I opened the door to my room, and as soon as I saw the flickering movements of Mai's gold sweater, I ducked my head.
Hey, what's up?
Hey, Hana, how'd the whole tree thing go? Good.
I turned away, setting my bag on the floor next to my desk. Then I stood and stared at it. I hadn't really thought past getting to my room. I was just trying to get to it so I wouldn't explode in front of anybody, so I had someplace to process things. Now Mai was here, and it was all I could do to hold myself together. Planning the next step had fallen to the wayside.
Hana, are you alright? You don't look too good.
I swallowed. Yeah, standing around like a zombie wasn't a good way to get people to not worry about you. I attempted a bright smile.
Of course I am. Why wouldn't I be?
My chin wobbled in the middle of my reply, and the look on Mai's face told me she didn't trust me as far as she could throw a semi-truck. Come here. Mai sat down on my bed and patted the space next to her. I glanced from her to the door. If I wanted to, I could run to the bathroom. If I did, a stall would definitely be empty, and I could cry by myself in peace. Mai would still know something happened, but at least we wouldn't have to deal with the awkwardness that was someone crying in front of you and not knowing how to comfort them. Mai followed my gaze to the door, then slapped the bed. Sit! I obediently sat down next to her. She turned to face me full on, and the presence of her big, empathetic eyes staring at me was uncomfortable. I grabbed Mr. Bunny. Mr. Bunny had always been there for me in times like these. He was the only one who saw me cry about things like this. I buried my face into his soft fur.
Tell me what's wrong, Hana. You can't always keep things to yourself. You already do that way too much. I do not.
My voice was muffled by Mr. Bunny's fur, but Mai just chuckled.
Uh-huh. Sure you don't, because I can't hear you crying in your bed on bad nights.
Immediately heat sprung to my face. Had I woken her? How many times had she heard me? Why hadn't she said anything? I rubbed my hands together, shaking my head. Mai stared at me, patiently, like a Buddhist monk in meditation. I sighed. But then another thought occurred to me. As sad as I was about Jacques' passing, John was even more upset. Far more upset. He asked me not to tell anybody, so what was I supposed to do? It might be nice to tell Mai, but...
It's not really any of my business. It must be if you're heaving sighs like that.
She wrapped an arm around my back, resting her head on my shoulder.
Come on, Hana, lay it on me. The old Meister's got you covered.
She nuzzled her head into my shoulder, and my heart squeezed.
Well, I ran into John today in the theater when I went to look for him. And at first it looked like nobody was there, but I heard a noise, and I found him crouched in a corner, and I auditioned for the role, but I didn't do as well as he thought I would, and now I might not get the part.
I winced as the lie slipped through my mouth. I was at least expecting an option to, choose whether to lie or not. I was at least expecting that. Mai didn't deserve dishonesty from me. But at the same time, John was a private person. He didn't trust easily. And this was very clearly a private matter, one that didn't belong with the rest of the gossip that sped daily between classroom doors. It wasn't necessarily that I thought Mai would tell people if she knew, but the potential harm was far, far too great for me to cave in a moment of weakness, even if I was sad, even if I was grieving again, even if I could use some comfort.
Aw, Hana.
What a jerk!
Man, what is up with that kid? He's always so rude. He spent all this time telling you you were perfect for the part, and now he's going back on his word? Don't worry, Hana. You're still the best tree in my eyes, and we both know that's what matters most. Mai winked, then pulled me into a hug. I'm sorry that you're sad, though. I do hope you end up feeling better soon. Life's too short to spend it worrying about some dumb boy. Tears once again filled my eyes, and I patted Mai's arm. Thank you, Mai. Thank you.
Alright, now that that's all over, I think it's time for me to end the episode. I've been Max, and I probably would have told Mai the truth, honestly. Sworn her to secrecy, but I probably would have told her. Anyway, we'll see you next time for more Asagao Academy Goodbye Jacques Edition. Club. Fuck. I fucked up the outro. I need to redo the whole episode. Whoosh. Boom, boom.